People talk about waste a lot. You can waste time and opportunity, money, your breath, and mostly we really hate wasting those things. We're obsessed with efficiency and hustling and getting the most out of every single second of every single day. Companies usually feel that way too. They're constantly trying to find the most efficient processes, the cheapest labor and materials, and the most cost-effective way to do business. But in spending so much time trying to avoid wasting money, time, and opportunities, we're actually creating an awful lot of it. Waste, I mean. Each year, humans create more than 11 billion tons of trash that's clogging up the environment. That's over a ton of waste for every person on the planet. And yeah, our time and energy and money is valuable, but so is the planet. So maybe it's time to start being just as concerned about the waste in our landfills as we are about all those other kinds of waste. Hi, I'm Miriam Nielsen, and this is Study Hall Sustainability. In sustainability, waste refers to things we disregard because they're byproducts of the production and consumption processes or no longer useful. And a lot of stuff falls into that category. For example, solid waste comes from everyday stuff we throw out, like food scraps, holey socks, and endless pieces of packaging. Then there's hazardous waste, or solid waste that's dangerous to human health and the environment. That includes things like batteries, which is why you may have a junk drawer full of batteries you don't know how to get rid of. And then there's human waste. Poop. Once again, on Study Hall, we're talking about poop. And while all this waste is definitely bad for the environment, it's surprisingly good for the economy. The global economy is designed to grow and thrive when companies create lots of products for people to buy and consume, and then go buy and consume again. This process is known as a linear economy, where the products and materials we produce follow a one-way path that always has the same destination: the garbage dump. First, a natural resource like, say, cotton is harvested and processed to manufacture a material or product, like my Save the Bees shirt. After the shirts are made, they're shipped to the stores where you can buy them and wear them until they wear out or go out of style. Hopefully, that means the bees have been saved. For most shirts, that's when they end up in the trash and are taken to a landfill where they join all the other waste. Experts estimate that 2/3 of all the textiles we make end up as waste. And especially if my shirt has any synthetic fabrics, which are made of plastics, those parts can stick around for hundreds of years. In the meantime, more new textiles are being made, which means more raw materials are being consumed and more waste will be produced. But there's an alternative path that can get our clothes out of the landfills and give them a new life. A circular economy is a model for producing and consuming that extends the life cycle of products and materials by reusing, repairing, recycling, or refurbishing them. And that can reduce our need for new raw materials, conserve energy, create jobs, and curb pollution and fossil fuel emissions. Like, you can donate this shirt to be loved and cherished by someone else who wants to save the bees, or do some DIY and combine it with all the other t-shirts you have advocating for whales and sea turtles and make a quilt, or turn it into yet another reusable tote bag, or tear it into strips to use as cleaning rags. And then, when you've gotten all the use out of it you possibly can, if it's fully organic, you can compost it. The possibilities are endless. Circular economies work great for some resources, like aluminum, which is nearly infinitely recyclable. Our soda cans can get broken down and reformed into new cans over and over again, as long as they don't end up in landfills like 50% of them currently do in the US. But that process gets more complicated for other kinds of products that may be made up of a combination of recyclable and non-recyclable materials. Things like t-shirts that can be made up of a blend of fibers, furniture made with wood, plastic, and paint, and buildings made up of steel and concrete. That's not to say it can't be done. It just means companies have to do a little thinking and planning to make their products more circular. And that kind of goes against the values of most companies and their shareholders. But the extra thought can be really worthwhile. See, when we're in a linear economy, we're missing a lot of opportunities to create more value. And you know how we feel about wasting opportunities. At every stage of a product's life cycle, there's potential for it to harm the environment. For example, when it comes to textiles, farming fibers can lead to deforestation or habitat loss for native species. And clothing production accounts for about 20% of the world's wastewater pollution. Definitely way worse than wearing white after Labor Day. So to find and reduce impacts like these, businesses can conduct life cycle assessments, which measure a product's complete environmental footprint from the moment it's created to the day it goes out of commission. And there are different kinds of life cycles. A cradle-to-grave cycle is how most things are made in a linear economy. They're made, used, and eventually thrown out. Meanwhile, in a cradle-to-cradle cycle, instead of being thrown out, a product is recycled or reused. And in both of these models, companies can look for ways to be more sustainable. So a t-shirt company using a cradle-to-grave cycle might try to save energy through the manufacturing process by adding solar panels to their factories. That helps them save money and reduce emissions, but it doesn't make the t-shirt any less likely to end up in the landfill. A company using a cradle-to-cradle model will look for ways to make sure a product's materials are part of a biological cycle, where they're returned to the earth without harm. For example, the company can make 100% wood furniture, and to make sure the furniture is recycled or disposed of properly, maybe they provide a service to reclaim items when customers no longer need or want them. Or products can fit into a technical cycle. This covers all of the elements of a product that can't break down. For instance, a company might make shampoo from fully biodegradable ingredients that get reabsorbed back into nature, but it comes in a plastic bottle that doesn't break down. As long as the bottle is fully recyclable or reusable and the company takes those bottles back for recycling, it can still be part of a cradle-to-cradle economy. In some cases, it can be pretty complex or even almost impossible to make sure every part of a product fits into these cycles. And it does require some extra time and effort for the company to figure out, which again, companies don't love. But it's not wasted time and effort. Doing these life cycle assessments can actually be good for a company's bottom line, so maybe not so scary for shareholders after all. And some companies are already finding that out. Let's look at my Save the Bees shirt again. Even if it's 100% cotton, the dye used in this shirt could be a problem. Many textiles today are colored with synthetic dyes that end up in our waterways. These byproducts of the manufacturing process are known as effluent, and they can harm aquatic life and move up the food chain as other animals eat the plants, fish, and frogs from these polluted waterways. So some companies are turning to natural solutions like dyeing clothing with beets, onion skins, and other plant matter. By using plant-based dyes, these companies are using more sustainable, renewable resources rather than relying on dyes that use fossil fuels and produce carbon emissions. Plant-based dyes also use less water, produce less waste, and leftover materials can be composted. Plus, synthetic dyes make textile recycling even harder since these dyes have to be removed from the fibers to reuse them. So the more natural approach opens the door for potentially more fiber reuse. And there are other companies working on that. For instance, some companies use recycled wool or cotton. Clothing made from these materials can be unraveled or shredded into small fibers, which are then respun into new yarn that gets woven into new textiles. Then there are companies recycling used items. For example, several companies have programs where you can return your used items. From there, the company can repair, donate, or resell your old item, or they might upcycle it into something new. These programs create less waste and make quality items accessible for more people who can buy the used item at a reduced price. And the companies make even more profit off the items, meaning it's great for them too. They're going green and making green. And of course, these kinds of solutions can be applied to way more than just clothing. Brummen, a town in the Netherlands, came up with a circular solution when it needed a new town hall. It's pretty common for cities to tear down or abandon old buildings and put up new ones, but the process creates a lot of waste that's hard to recycle, like glass, steel, concrete, or carpets made of synthetic fabrics. So when Brummen planned its new town hall, the city thought ahead and made sure 90% of the materials could be dismantled and reused in the future. They chose materials based on how valuable they'd be to future buildings. Like instead of using tough to recycle concrete, they chose high-quality timber that could be repurposed in a new building when the town hall isn't needed anymore. That way, they wouldn't have to chop down new trees for new construction and would save money on materials in the future. We've got other options too, like we can try to buy less stuff, we can go to local cobblers, tailors, mechanics, and technicians to help our stuff last longer, which also helps the local economy. And while lots of our products these days, from cell phones to farm equipment, are designed to be easier to replace than to repair, lots of places are working on legislation to change that. The Right to Repair movement is looking for ways to ensure that companies provide tools, replacement parts, and necessary information so that people can repair and keep using their products instead of having to throw them out and buy new ones. The idea is to start seeing trash as something valuable. After all, there's no excuse for single use. But these kind of programs only work if everyone else sees the value too. In the moment, it can feel a lot easier to buy a new piece of furniture or clothing instead of trying to fix the old one. It seems like less of a hassle to make a trip to the dumpster instead of figuring out the whole process for shipping something back to the company. And it can feel more attainable to buy clothing that's more affordable than the pieces made from recycled materials and planet-friendly dye. But the more government regulations are in place to encourage companies to operate differently, and the more we as consumers ask companies to make sustainable choices, the more other companies and their competitors will take similar action, and the more choices we'll have, and the more accessible these kinds of products will become. It's all circular, and it all comes with trade-offs. It may mean spending more money, taking more time, and being a little bit less efficient or cost-effective. But for the health and future of the planet, it may be a choice we just have to make. If you're enjoying this series and are interested in taking the full Study Hall Sustainability course and earning college credit from ASU, check out gostudyhall.com or click on the button to learn more. And if you want to help us out, give this video a like, comment your favorite sustainable brands, and smash that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. See you next time.